Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine a nickname so specific, it nails not just the crime, but the time of day. The Midday Murderer.
It's quite striking, isn't it? Really paints a picture, suggests a deliberate pattern right from the start.
Exactly. And that's where we're diving in today on the deep dive. We're tackling the story of Klaus Gossmann, drawing entirely from the source material you've provided. Our mission: to piece together the facts, trace the timeline of his crimes, understand the investigation details, his capture, the outcome of his case, basically pull out the key info from these sources.
And it covers that 5-year period, 1960 to 1965, mostly in West Germany, Bavaria specifically.
Yeah. This case, as the sources laid out, it gives us a real window into a specific crime spree, how they investigated back then, and, well, the whole long-term trajectory of a life sentence.
Absolutely. So maybe start with the man himself, Klaus Gossmann. Who was he, according to the background info we have?
Right. The sources sketch out his early life. Born 1940, Frankfurt an der Oder.
And there's a detail about his father.
Yes, an officer, killed by American troops in 45. The family moved around a bit after the war, eventually settling near Nuremberg in Hersbruck from 1949.
And his schooling. It sounds like it wasn't exactly smooth sailing.
No, not really. The sources mentioned difficulties, repeating a class, failing his first go at the Abitur, the big exam for university entrance in Germany.
Right. But he did get it eventually.
He did, yeah, from a different school in Ingolstadt in 1962.
Okay, so he gets the qualification, then economics.
Briefly. Started at the Technische Hochschule in Nuremberg, fall of 62. But the sources just say he discontinued it, didn't stick with it.
And then there was a military attempt mentioned, too. That also didn't quite work out.
That's right. He volunteered, candidate officer, summer of 64. Moved into quarters that October, but kept asking to be dismissed.
And they didn't grant it.
Nope. So April 65, he deserted, and from then on, apparently living under false names around Nuremberg.
Right. So by spring 65, just before that last crime we know about, he's already sort of off the radar. Deliberately.
Seems like it. Suggests he was actively avoiding the system, which, fits with someone planning to operate outside the law.
Which brings us back to that nickname, the Midday Murderer. The sources are pretty clear where that came from.
Yeah, straight from the pattern. Robberies and murders mostly committed around noon.
Predominantly at noon. It's specific, almost. Counterintuitive, maybe.
Yeah.
But there's another characteristic highlighted about the weapon use.
Yes, key detail.
Yeah.
He made use of the firearm immediately. It wasn't about threats building up. The gun was out right away.
The motive stated as robbery, but that immediate use says something, doesn't it? It wasn't like a backup plan.
Exactly. Suggests a level of planning, maybe, or just a readiness for lethal force that's quite chilling. The gun wasn't just there. It was step one.
And the timing. Midday. The sources even give his own reason.
Yeah, apparently he said he was not an early riser and needed the morning for his preparations.
Needed the morning for preparations. It's such a mundane detail almost, but terrifying in this context.
Yeah.
His daily routine dictating when he'd commit murder?
Kind of strips away the mystery of the timing, doesn't it? Just practical, disturbing habit.
Let's trace that pattern then. Through the timeline of the crimes, the sources detail. Starting in 1960.
Okay, first double murder, April 22, 1960. Küchengartenstrasse, Nuremberg. He was raiding an elderly woman's apartment.
And people came to help her.
That's right. She raised the alarm. A subtenant and her fiancé rushed over. Gossmann shot them both. Dead.
And he fled. Got away.
Fled without any loot, actually. Left the elderly woman alive.
And she gave a description. The sources really emphasized the scale of the police work after that.
Oh, yeah. Huge effort. Alarm out across all stations, Nuremberg and beyond. Hundreds of clues followed up.
Trying to get an ID. Showing the woman thousands of photos.
About 2,000 photos from existing files, yeah. Compared fingerprints, looked for links to other robberies. And this massive screening. They examined records for over 50,000 men.
50,336 men, born 39 or 40, who'd lived in Nuremberg. That's staggering for the time. Pre-computers, mostly.
Absolutely staggering. They even questioned, over 1,000 men from the dating agency where the elderly woman worked? Just trying anything.
It shows how desperate they were for a lead. The weapon from that first one, an FN Herstal.
Yep, FN Herstal 7.65 millimeter pistol.
But despite all that, he wasn't caught then. The timeline jumps to 62 for the next murders mentioned.
Right, the Sparkasse murders. Sparkasse, those are German savings banks. September 10th, 1962, he shoots the manager of a branch in Okenbrook. Robbery.
Got away with cash.
Over 3,000 Deutschmark. Witnesses saw him escape towards the station. Weapon this time. a Walther PPK.
And then another one just a few months later.
November 30th, 1962, attacked a Sparkasse branch in Neuhaus under Pegnitz. This time, he shot and killed a retiree.
And the detail there, the victim wasn't even reacting to the robbery.
Seems that way. The sources say the man appeared unaware, was just reaching into his pocket for his glasses. Gossmann shot him. Weapon used here, a Walther P38.
Okay, so different Walthers used in those two bank jobs compared to the F. and Erstel in the first murders.
Correct. And that becomes really crucial later, linking things together.
Which leads us to the gun shop murders in March 63.
March 29th, 1963, the owner of a gun shop and his mother both shot dead.
And this is where the ballistics tied it all together.
Exactly. The analysis, bullets, casings, firing pin marks showed it was the same Walther pistols from the Ockenbruck and Neuhaus bank murders used in the gun shop killings.
So concrete proof linking those three crime scenes, the two banks, the gun shop, to one person.
Forensically solid link. The sources also add a little detail about the gun shop owner.
Oh, that's it.
That he himself was apparently under investigation for maybe dealing arms illegally.
Interesting context, though the sources don't explicitly say that's why Gossmann targeted him, beyond it being, well, a gun shop, a source of weapons.
Right, so, recap. Double murder 60, two bank murders 62 linked by Walthers, gun shop murders 63 linked by the same Walthers. The final crime detailed is June 65.
June 1st, 1965. Nuremberg department store. This one sounds different, not a planned business hit.
No, more like an opportunistic street crime, it seems. Tried to snatch a customer's purse.
And that attempt led straight to his capture.
It did. People chased him, passersby. It turned into a shootout with the police.
And tragically, more violence even then.
Yes. In that final confrontation, the sources state he killed another man and badly injured two others before they finally got him.
So after all those years, the massive investigation early on, he's caught almost incidentally after a purse snatching.
Yeah.
How did they finally pin all the earlier crimes on him?
Well, he was arrested right there, June 1st, 1965, after the shootout.
What did he have on him? The sources mention items found?
3 pistols, a blackjack, and firecrackers are listed. Bit odd, the firecrackers.
Huh. Did he confess immediately?
No, denied it all at first.
So what broke him? What was the key evidence?
The guns, primarily. 1 pistol he had on him, plus 2 more found in an apartment in Nuremberg. Ballistics matched them to the murder weapons from the previous crimes.
The stolen guns.
Exactly. The sources say they were traced back to thefts in 59, 60, and 62. And then a witness from that Ockenbruck bank raid back in 62 saw him in a lineup, or confrontation, and positively identified him.
So the guns plus a witness ID. That would be hard to deny. And his confession. The sources use a specific word to describe his attitude.
Indifference. Yes, they specifically mention the indifference he showed towards his victims when he confessed.
And there are some chilling quotes provided in the material that really underline that.
Yeah, they give a direct look into his mindset. About that first victim in 1960, the fiancé who came to help, he apparently said, "He came rushing at me like a savage. Since I absolutely wanted to ward off his attack, I therefore fired a 3rd time on the man."
Wow. Framing the rescuer as the aggressor.
Exactly. And for the bank robberies, his view was stark. When I came to the bank and pulled the pistol out, then all they had to do was pick up their cash. If they did not do that, it was their own fault if I had to shoot them.
Blaming the victims for being shot. Just incredible lack of empathy.
Totally. And even the man killed during his capture in 65, he said, "I was afraid that I would be captured and yet had to shoot in self-defense. Again, self-defense while fleeing a crime and shooting at police and public."
Those statements, they really offer a disturbing glimpse into how he rationalized it all. So he's caught, he confesses. What happened at the trial?
Trial started July 27, 1967. Sentence, life imprisonment.
Life. For all 7 murders across those years.
Here's a key detail from the sources. That first double murder, back in 1960, it wasn't actually part of the sentencing in the 67 trial.
Why not?
Because he committed it before he turned 21. So technically, under juvenile justice considerations at the time, perhaps, he was sentenced specifically for the other 5 murders, plus 3 particularly serious robbery cases mentioned.
I see. So sentenced for 5 murders and the robberies, even though the sources document 7 victims in total connected to him.
Based on what's in our material, yes. And that life sentence was long, very long. Until 2015, he was Bavaria's longest-serving prisoner.
50 years. Half a century behind bars. But the sources detail a pretty complex legal road towards his eventual release, kicking off around 2010.
Yeah, it wasn't straightforward. Went through several stages. Early 2010, a district court in Regensburg actually ordered his release on long-term parole.
So one court looked at it after decades and thought, okay, release is warranted.
That was the initial decision. But it was challenged. The higher regional court in Nuremberg overturned it. They cited continued danger to the public.
Okay, so a higher court pushed back, saw him as still a risk.
Exactly. But it didn't end there. In 2012, a constitutional complaint was filed against that decision, challenging the higher court's ruling on constitutional grounds.
Like arguing it violated his basic rights somehow.
Presumably. And the sources say that complaint was successful.
A successful constitutional complaint. That must have found a significant issue with keeping him locked up indefinitely.
It seems so. It reopened the door. And that whole process eventually led to his release in 2015. From Straubing prison, on probation, after 50 years.
50 years. From desertion and this string of brutal midday murders in his early 20s. Capture. That chillingly indifferent confession. A life sentence, becoming the state's longest inmate. And then this whole legal battle resulting in release. Quite a trajectory.
It really is a journey through crime, the justice system of the time, punishment, and how courts grapple with assessing risk after such a long period.
Absolutely. So we've done our deep dives, sticking strictly to the source material on Klaus Gossmann, covered the timeline from that first terrible midday murder in 1960, right through capture, sentence, and his release on probation in 2015.
A really detailed picture drawn just from the information provided.
So maybe a final thought for you, the listener, to ponder, based purely on this complex story we've traced from the sources. When you hear about a case like this, multiple murders spanning years, then 50 years locked away, followed by a court-ordered release back into the community on probation, what questions does that raise for you? About, crime itself, about punishment, about how we judge risk over such long timescales, and maybe about the potential or the limits of rehabilitation.